This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. Police department is rocked by a very high-profile arrest. Victims are saved from the clutches of violent kidnappers. And your internet service is about to get a whole load better. But firstly, to our headline story. The police of late have been battered by one case after another of officers not only disregarding the law, but breaking it in unimaginable ways. Of late, we have had the recent case of 11 officers testing positive for drugs, the incident of the Chinese drug traffickers paying off officers to look the other way, and now one of the highest profile arrests yet, that of Deputy Director of the Department of Anti-Drug Crimes, who was arrested earlier in the week for bribery. It is said that he extorted tens of thousands of dollars from criminals who faced lengthy prison sentences. And this senior officer would accept a sack full of cash, and in return, the criminal would quite simply walk free.
It does not get much more shocking than this when the Deputy Director of the Department of Anti-Drug Crimes gets arrested for demanding large sums of money to free foreigners that have been arrested for drug offences. The Deputy Commissioner of the National Police in charge of cracking down on drug crimes stated that Major General Anon and 4 other men have been arrested for crimes related to extortion. In one case, which is a very good example of others, on October 16 of this year, the officers stopped a black car and they arrested 4 Chinese men in Phnom Penh for possession of illegal drugs. They then took those men to the Anti-Drug Department to be searched. And it was there that senior officers met with the prisoners and negotiated a fee for their release. And what they wanted was $10,000 per person. A quick and easy $40,000 for a few hours' work. The Chinese men were held overnight and they agreed to hand over their mobile phones and their PIN numbers to allow police to access an ABA bank account. But in there was just $33,000. So to top up to the full $40,000, the 4 prisoners were made to sign a power of attorney to withdraw the extra cash from another bank account and then transfer it via e-cash, which to me seems a little daft, as what you have now is a very clear paper trail. And there was another strange incident. For when the prisoners were released, they were forced by a senior officer to write a letter to say thank you for their release. Now, to tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea why would you do that. I mean, bribery is all about moving cash in dollar bills and leaving absolutely no trace of a transaction. But this one case I've told you of is not the only case against this senior officer. There are many others, all with exactly the same MO. Cars pulled over with drugs and bribes taken for the release of the prisoners. It certainly shows a very worrying trend. But to see an officer as senior as the Deputy Director of Anti-Drug Crimes now facing a long term in jail will certainly make it very clear to other officers. No matter how big you are by no means immune to the long arm of the law.
And this week it does not get any better for the police. For earlier in the week, the prosecutor of Kampong Speu Provincial Court ordered authorities to open an urgent investigation into how was it that over 200 gunshots were fired at a drunken birthday party. The insanity of firing off hundreds of rounds when drunk beggars belief. But your credulity will be stretched when you discover that some of the gunmen were, in fact, police officers, who, whilst in a drunken frenzy, pulled out their weapons and lit up the night sky with a fuselage of bullets worthy of a war movie. And it was not just handguns they were firing wildly, but also fully automatic assault rifles.
Local people were extremely scared when, in the dead of night, they heard a barrage of gunfire, hundreds of shots being discharged, and nobody knew what was going on. Was this a drug gang battling it out? Nobody knew, but they did know that they were in extreme danger. The shooting just went on, but then later they discovered that this wild gunfire in fact came from a birthday party. A 64-year-old local said that a man named Cha had come from Phnom Penh to organise a birthday party with about 20 of his friends. Later that night, they heard a series of gunshots, and they were so fearful that they did not leave their house. And other residents in the area also fled to seek refuge. But don't think for one moment this was just a few handguns. For when the scene of the party was inspected, what was found was to amaze the officers there, for they found over 200 spent shell casings, 112 rounds of standard ammunition, but also 36 rounds of M16 and 55 rounds from an AK assault rifle. Quite incredibly, these guys had assault rifles, both M16s and AK-47s. This incident garnished so much notoriety, the Prime Minister himself has intervened and has ordered the dismissal of all police officers involved in this shooting spree. He said, "I learnt about this shooting in Khmer. Strict action must be taken to expel those involved." What was found was quite simply incredible. There was an M16 assault rifle, and then there was an AK-47 assault rifle, a Colt pistol made in America, a Beretta made in Italy, and also a Canik SS pistol. And this armoury that was set ablaze that night leads me to one single question. Why did they need this armoury of guns? For what purpose were they carrying them? Yes, some police need to be armed, but surely those arms should be secured and only deployed when absolutely necessary.
To me, there is one crime I just do not understand due to its unmitigated cruelty. The victims of this crime must be paralysed by fear and to be terrified beyond all comprehension when they are violently snatched from their everyday lives. They do not know what is happening to them, nor if they will live to see the next sunrise. I am, of course, speaking of kidnapping. This week, 2 cases have come to light, and both cases have dangerous gang members at their heart. Men who think nothing of snatching innocent people and torturing their victims to get the cash that they so desperately crave.
In the first case, a raid by specialist police officers on an alleged kidnapping operation in Phnom Penh came as a huge relief to the victims. Sources state that the armed raid was initiated after reports that Cambodian nationals were being held against their will at that location. The source also added that the Chinese criminals that held the Cambodian captives were forcing them to work in an illegal gambling operation. The victims, under threat of violence daily, were being forced to work online to fleece innocent people of their money. The criminals, it said, were refusing to let the Cambodians leave the premises unless they paid $25,000 each to their captives. The imprisoned Cambodians' relatives heard of their loved ones' plight and went to the authorities in Phnom Penh to ask police to intervene. It was then that the Serious Crimes Office, with the Immigration Office of Phnom Penh's municipal police, acted immediately, and they raided the location and arrested the gang members. In the second case of this week, other foreign men have been arrested and sent to the municipal court for the crime of kidnapping and trying to extort $6,400 from a victim's family. The operation to arrest these men was complicated and lasted for over 2 weeks. But the time invested by law enforcement was well worth it, as it led them to Pre-T village in Phnom Penh. And there, the Chinese men were arrested and found to be armed with handguns and considered to be extremely dangerous. The threat of kidnapping here in the kingdom is small compared to many other countries. And each and every case solved by the police sends a very clear message to any of those foreign gangsters out there. What you can get away with in your own turf, you ain't getting away with here.
This week we have had gun crime, kidnapping and drugs. So let us go out on a gentler note. One that should please you, for it will benefit you directly. And that is the news that Sihanoukville, Hong Kong optical fibre cable is on target to be completed in 2025. Now, what that means to you is that your internet will not only be more stable, but also will be a lot faster.
The project to build the optical fibre cable network between Sihanoukville and Hong Kong will be completed in July of 2025. The company involved is the Unicom Group and is one of the largest telecommunications operators within Asia. And according to reports, the company has signed a deal with the Cambodian Ministry of Telecoms to implement this project. And once completed, Cambodia will have its first state-owned optical fibre cable. And the task at hand, quite simply, is huge, as the cable itself is 3,000 kilometres long, and the submarine optical fibre cable will run all the way from Hong Kong to Sihanoukville. Now, it's at this point I feel I must clear a myth out of the way, because there is so many, when asked, where does the internet come from, who will point at the sky, when in fact that is wholly wrong. Yes, you can use satellites and stuff, but that is absurdly expensive. What is in fact used is cables laid on the seabed that cover the ocean floor like a giant spider's web. But that is not where we get the word web from, as in World Wide Web. That in fact comes from the web of computers we're all linked together to, including your own computer and your phone. It is truly staggering that these fibre optic cables being laid deep into the depths of the ocean are in fact the exact same way that the Victorians laid their telegraph cables over 100 years ago. At this point, we're in fact doing nothing new. If anything, all we're doing is updating what those amazing Victorians did back in the 1800s. And this particular cable coming towards us is a monster, for it connects not only Cambodia, but also the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, and further stretches to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. And it is much needed, for Cambodia's demand for internet services has increased dramatically. Cambodia has over 17 million phone internet users alone, more than the number of people that live here. Add in that another 300,000 fixed internet users, and you will see why we need more cable. But here's a fact. A last fact for you. Cambodia itself already has 640 kilometers of underwater fiber optical cable in the kingdom's national waters. And I love it. Otherwise, where would I be able to get those daft Facebook-based news stories I so love to report on?
It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
The weather this week in the country has been extremely cold, as you can see by a headline that we ran earlier saying morning temperatures drop to 18 degrees in parts of Cambodia, not all of it. But this next bit of footage shows very clearly what 18 degrees feels like for the average Cambodian. Whereas in dear old England, 18 degrees demands only two things: a large jug of Pimm's and a picnic. How things are so different in different places. So let me quickly go to the jolly old weather chart, and what do we see? We see rain, we see thunderclouds, and we see a little bit of lightning. But here's the real deal. The real deal is the monsoon season is tapering off. It ain't over, but it's certainly tapering.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly roundup.